has begun. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting time with me. Very exciting times. Can't wait. It's going to be great. So, as usual, I'm just going to give some time for people to join us. I like to give a little couple minutes before we get going, so that I have time for people to jump in the meeting. But welcome. Feel free to chat away. What's going on, Eric Russner? Uh, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us. So I'm gonna go. It's the holiday season. With a dip dee doo, a dip but a dop. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a little bit today. I feel like I'm gonna just do some sculpting. However, there is a couple techniques that I want to touch on. I have a friend that contacted me yesterday, and there's a couple features I was discussing with him about that I want to make sure he actually gets to see. So I said, hey, you know what? I'm streaming tomorrow. Let me just do it in the stream. What's going on, Alex? Thanks for coming, YouTubing it. I love it. So I'm just gonna wait for my buddy, Mr. Tully. Are you in here yet? Uh, Ian, what's going on? I am nuts, right? It's. I do have the certificate on my wall that says I am clinically okay. Okay, so he's watching. I, I'm obviously, for those of you that know, I'm a big hard surface fan. Become that. It's become one of my go-tos for me working in hard surface. So I'm going to do a little bit of a hard surfacing model today, just to kind of show my technique as well, what I like to do. I'm a big component of non-destructive. I love to be able to make changes. When I have an art director come to me and say, hey, I want this change now done here, I want this change done here, I like to make sure I set myself up for those changes. So my big word for today is non-destructive. So I really like to work that way. So I'm going to show a couple ways of doing some scribe lining, because that's what I was discussing with my friend yesterday. Right? And I will show Night Shadow how to make some macro buttons. It's really easy. Macros are super easy. It's just like actions in Photoshop. So anyways, okay, so scribe lining is there's multiple ways actually to do it inside of ZBrush. Um, and it's going to really to come down to what you're working on at that point. So the first one I want to show is if I'm an artist that's working sculpturally hard surface and I want to do some scribe lining. I also use this technique for I've done hair and things with this for characters. So I've got just a magical cube, the Borg ship, eight subdivision levels. So I'm sitting at 1.5 million. So my favorite brush now to do the scribe lining stuff now is this Chisel Brush, which in essence is VDM brushes. Okay, so this is just a bunch of brushes that you can make, and VDMs are very, 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 very powerful because you can have undercutting. So these are an example of VDMs where I can grab an ear, right, and pop it out, and then we're getting an ear, and we've got all this space in here, which is AIE undercutting, which gives us the ability. Box Troll Man. Okay, so this chisel brush is a VDM. Okay, so you can see that there's these weird shapes on planes. That's all it is. Okay, so if I say I grab this one, I'm going to turn symmetry off. As you can see, it can create a very nice cut line, right? So scribe lining. Okay. So when I'm delivering files to a client for myself, it's usually a ZTL. However, in most cases, I deal a lot more with 3D printing world. So it's usually STLs, OBJs that are ready for actually 3D printing, because I do more stuff on the side for doing things that I'd want to 3D print. And then I'm just a kind of a 3D print guru kind of guy. I really enjoy using 3D printing. So to answer your question, Eric, it's mostly usually STLs or OBJs for the most part. Okay, so back to this. So you can see we can get a nice line in here. Okay, so there's a couple things that I like to do to set myself up. Number one, for me, for this particular brush, in most cases, I want to use it to do scribe lining or some very specific edging, right? So maybe I want to do things like this where I can go and make some very nice cuts and specific angles. And I'll get to how I'm doing this. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is I like to set the brush up. So for me, number one, in the brush palette, in the tablet pressure, I turn this off. Okay, and in essence, what I mean by turning it off, I'm going to make my pen become a mouse. So I'm going to tell ZBrush to pretty much take away pressure sensitivity. So you can see I've made the size go all the way to the top. So that's pretty much just saying consistent size no matter how strong or light I push on the surface, right? So, and then you can see all the rest of them are already set like that. So in essence, having all these sliders set like that, there's really no pressure sensitivity in it anymore. Okay? And the reason why I'm going to do this is when we get into this, I'm going to be drawing out a line, and then as an artist, I'm going to rotate and do things, and I want to continue from this line. Okay? So the first thing I do to do that is turn off that pressure sensitivity. I don't like using a mouse for sculpting in ZBrush because it's like having boxing gloves on. The second thing that I'm going to do is in the stroke palette, this brush already has lazy mouse turned on. For me, I'm going to turn this lazy radius down a lot. I don't want it at 100. I want it at 10 is usually what I like. So again, for those that don't know, as I'm drawing out that little red line you're seeing right there, that's your radius. So in essence, that line tells ZBrush actually when to start drawing the stroke. So if I have it at 100, you'll see this red line is going to get long. Might help if I type double zeros. You can see how long it is, and then the stroke starts. So this really to help, take care of jittery hands. Look at my hands, look at my hands, see? Okay, so the reason why I don't want that at 100 is what I was just doing here. So I like to draw out lines, and you can see the stroke doesn't go all the way to the end where my little cross brush is. I don't like that because I'm going to use this for hard surface purposes. Okay, so I'm going to drop this down to 10. And then I'm going to turn up this lazy radius. And just for the benefit, I'm going to turn that to 100, just so we have it. Okay? So what I've done now is I've set myself up with this brush where I've pretty much eliminated pressure sensitivity. So I don't have my hand making a difference in size or pushing in and out. Okay? So now I've turned on that lazy, so I can now draw something, right? Rotate or move things around, and then click, and you can see it starts to draw where I left off. Right? So even if I click way out here, you can see it's trying to draw right there. Now, the third thing we need to solve is this. Okay? So this is just, it's trying to go there, but then it's also first establishing the brush. So what I mean by that is we draw this stroke out, right? And then when I go to here, yeah, it's going to start right there, but it's got to start with the surface that's existing, right? And the surface that's existing now right here is not flat. Okay, so when I go here to click, you can see the brush is starting, so you get that little dimple in there. So that's an easy thing to solve, and it's solved with Morph Target. So I throw on a Morph Target. Okay, so now when I'm drawing, I can just start, I can move things around, position this, reposition this, and then you can see I can start going, and I can have a nice continuous stroke how I want to have, right? So I can do things like this, and then continuing it, and rotate it around, right, and continue this process. So for me, I like to be able to add another feature that we used in 2018, we added it, which is now this line. So this is allowing me, when Lazy Mouse is on now, I will get this line when I'm holding the Shift key. Okay? So when I let go, you can see my stroke goes all the way in, and I can just keep drawing. So as an artist that I like to use this technique for scribe lighting, sculpturally, I will click on the surface, right? We'll turn perspective off just so we can look right at the surface as well. Click, and I can draw a line. And then now I can click and draw a line. And then I can click and say I want that to be at 45 degrees. Then I want it to come straight across. Right? So I have this ability to even create lines like that and not just be a free flowing. And because I have a morph target, I can go over top of surfaces now. And you can see this depth is being kept the same. So this is what that morph target's also going to help us with. So in recapping this, I'm doing three major things to this brush. Number one, I'm just going here and pretty much turning off pressure sensitivity so I can make sure I'm getting the same depth every time when I click on the surface. And I don't want the size to change based upon my pressure because I'll never be able to make the pressure when I'm lifting my pen off the surface, because I'm using a Cintiq as well, to putting it back on the surface. I'll never be able to get that pressure exactly the same, so I eliminate that problem. Boom. That's what I do there. In the in the stroke palette, I turn down my lazy radius because I want to do this line part that I have going here, okay? And I turn on my lazy snap so I can do continuous drawing. Okay, and then to recap this line part again, what I'm doing is I'm clicking on the surface, then I'm holding the shift key. So my hand is still on the shift key, and my pen is still on the Cintiq, okay? When I want to draw the line, I let go of shift key, but my pen never comes off. And if I don't take my pen off, I can just now continue this process. Hold shift key, let go of shift key, hold shift key, let go of shift key, hold shift key, let go of shift key, right? So this creates a really great way for me being able to do something like this, right? And then of course we can click and then hold shift key and go across. So I can click anywhere here, whoops, and do that same process, and you can see I'm going to get great results. So this is looking at more in a sculptural sense, okay? So obviously you can just grab and make any one of these, and you can have different, in essence, scribe lining. So this, to me, this brush has become, for me, a scribe lining brush for my hard surface workings that I just want to sculpturally put some kind of nice little scribe line, and then there's just variations of it now, right? And then obviously your draw size is controlling how big that line's going to be, okay? So I have another technique that I'm a big fan of that I like to use, okay, is so I also like to, and for me, I started this with non-destructive word for today, okay? Yeah, if you want to hold for masking, you can absolutely do that. So this is a great question by Big Bat 95. So they're asking when I'm holding masking, right, and be able to do this, this is a great idea, right? Because as long as you have lazy mouse on, right, then you're going to be able to do what I'm just doing. So I got to make sure I hold down the control key, I click on lazy mouse, and then now I can click, right, and then hold the shift, right, and I get that, and then I can create masks like that. However, you guys could also, if you want to, instead of using the lazy mouse this way with this, you can use this backtrack to snap to line as well. I used to use this a lot. It would allow me to do this, and then I would draw a line, and then say, okay, I want a mask that go from here to here, draw a line, and then I want a mask that go from here to here. I want to draw a line. You have the ability in here as well to do a path, and I like to you turn on snap to track as well, so that I can actually say, I'll draw a path first, and then it comes back and draws that. So of course then I can inverse this, and then we can go to something like deformation, and then I can inflate this in, right? Inflate it out if I want to, right? So then you have consistent depth there as well. So yes, you can do that. You just got to make sure you're turning on lazy mouse. That's the number one thing. If you're going to use this mask pen, make sure you come to stroke and turn on lazy mouse. Then you'll be able to do that shift thing I was doing. Okay? So that should answer that question. Okay? Looking at another question. Hey, Paul, can you... I have a second scan. I'm reading a question. Yeah, creating a hole through geometry we can do. Okay, so let me get on to the other technique that I like to do for scribe lining, which is almost kind of my preferred technique, and it's because it's that non-destructive word I'm using. The downfall to this technique I just showed with the sculpting brush is it's kind of a destructive, and what I mean by that is when you guys make this line, and you make this line, you make this line, you're like, oh no, I don't want this one anymore. You don't have a really quick way to get rid of it. But if you're following the steps I just laid out, you kind of do, because obviously if you remember, we have a morph target, so I can switch to the morph brush, right? And then I can use this in essence as an eraser and erase something. So this is what I mean by a non-destructive. At any point in time, I can get rid of something, and I'm not at the mercy of going, oh no, and I'm trying to reverse engineer. That's the biggest thing I try to keep myself away from when I'm working. I don't want to have to try and reverse engineer, especially when I'm working with an art director or something like that. I know there are probably going to be maybe some changes. Very rarely do I do a sculpt and go, yes, right, and lift it up, it's perfect. That's very rare, okay? So it's happened. I've had it happen, but it's very rare. So I've developed myself a workflow where I want to make sure when I'm working with that director or art director that I have freedom to, okay, you want me to change that? Okay, that's not 4 hours of reverse engineering or 2 hours of reverse engineering. It's 1 second of reverse engineering and then go do the changes that I want to be done. Okay? So, and then of course now with 2020, we can go use also now the history recall brush, right? So now I can go backwards, right, to a point, hold the control key, click this, and then now I have this, and then now I can recall it this way as well. So even if you didn't store a morph target, you now have this ability as well. So this is why I like this brush. It's going right into my non-destructive workflow that I like. Okay, moving on, because we're going to be here all day, me, and I'm just going to keep saying non-destructive, and it's going to be boring for you all. Okay, so I'm going to make a brush specifically for booleans, okay? And I like to create just a simple cube, okay, that is pretty much 6 sides, right? I'm not doing anything fancy here. I'll turn on the floor, okay? So you can see kind of where we are in the world, right? Which now we can use our wonderful handy dandy cam view, right? And I can click and snap to the front and backs, and I know I'm at the front and back now. Okay, so I don't even need to turn the floor on anymore, which is nice. Okay, just using that cam view to know I'm sitting at the front. I'm going to throw some little Z modeler in here, and I'm going to say, okay, let's take this cube and let's split it into multiples. Okay, so I'm going to say let's insert multiple edges, and we'll do something like that. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the polygrouping, so I'm going to maintain just one polygroup right now. And let's now switch to single edge loop, and I'm going to say let's add an edge loop here. Okay, and then from here to here, I'm going to pull that out a little bit right in there. And then I'm going to say, okay, let's work symmetrically. And I'm going to move just these edges, something like that. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'm going to say, all right, let's take these as well. And maybe, don't like that. Let me insert an edge loop first. Maybe something like that. And then do that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there. Happy little trees. Okay, so something like, that's looking pretty good. It's all right. Let's also, for the sake of just doing something different as well, I'm going to use the slice curve in here. And of course, I can slice across like this. Okay, that's making a new polygroup. I don't want to do that. Okay, so I'm going to mask everything off and then slice across. And this is a feature that if you mask your mesh when you're slicing, we'll do the slice, but we won't change the polygrouping. Lisa needs braces moment. This is out there. I like it. Welcome to the club. Okay. So Maverick, the Gundam guy, I've been super busy with some other projects. I'm planning to get back to Gundam hopefully this month. So I'll bring him up and show you where I'm at with him. I just got to do the legs. So, well, I'll bring him back though. Okay, so this is a technique that I like to do. And then this way, you know, I've got now just these vertex edges that I can also move around a little bit and then manipulate and then maybe do something like this. Because maybe I also want to, you know what, I want to also slice this way. Okay, and then I say, all right, I want to mirror and weld that across. Right, so I can say, oh, I need this side sliced and mirror and weld across. And I'll just now take these. I'm just making something a little just different. I'm not doing anything special here. Okay, so now that I have this, what's important to me is this. I like to turn on my dynamic subdiv because I want to see what is this going to look like when I divide. That's very important to me because I know I'm going to do that in my land of ZBrush. I know down the road, down the pipeline, I'm going to want to be able to divide this, okay? And I'm building something that you guys are going to see that I'm using with live Boolean. So I clearly don't like this result, okay? Not a fan of this result at all, right? So I'm going to say, let's do something different, okay? So I also don't like, you know what, we'll keep it, I guess. So I'm going to crease this edge here through here, these edges here and here, okay? And then so that when I do this, I'm looking more at something like that, and I want that creased as well. You know what, let's crease that. And I also want that creased. So we have something like this. This is more what I'm looking at, okay? Now, this is super crisp, okay? I don't want it to look this crisp though, because this is computer generated. This looks too perfect. So the next thing I'm going to do is go to my crease level, and I'm going to drop this down to 2. And then in my dynamic subdiv, I'm going to put this probably around 4. This is kind of my go-to. This is what I'm looking for, more something like this. Okay, it's got a little bit rounding, softness to the edges. Okay, like French bread. Yeah. Okay, so now what I'm going to do with this is say, all right, let's convert this into an insert mesh brush. But more importantly, I want to, okay, make different polygroups. So I'm just going to show the top and bottom half. Okay, and I'm going to go polygroup and say autogroup. So what I have here now is this is a polygroup, this is a polygroup, and the middle is a polygroup. Okay, so I'll make this a different color visually so you guys can see it better. Okay. And now what I'm setting myself up here is I'm going to make an insert mesh brush that I want to put along a curve. In essence, is what I'm looking to do. All right. I know that what I'm about to do is this is going to be the start of the brush, this is going to be the end of the brush, and this is going to be the middle. I want to have now maybe one more row of topology in here just to give it a little bit more. I'm going to do perfectly down the middle. So I'm going to go to Insert, Multiple Edge Loops, and I'm going to put my specific resolution to 1. And I'm going to say Keep Group because I don't want the polygrouping again to change. Okay? And then I'm clicking here. So what I'm making is something that just joined. I'm making a brush that I'm going to show you guys a technique that I love to use for hard surface. Okay, so now that I have this, right, I'm going to go brush. I'm going to say create insert mesh brush. I'm going to say new. Okay, what we have now is this. Right, so I can draw it out. Great, yay. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to throw on to a curve mode in the stroke palette. So now I got this going along a curve. Right, so that allows me now to draw this out. And this is where you can see now the polygrouping comes important. Right, you can see the beginning and ends, and then you can see the green being repeated. So this is beginning and ends, and this is being repeated, right? So I have something like this. So I want to solve, obviously, these problems. So in the brush palette is where I go. Now, the reason why I'm going in the brush palette is, okay, what you guys got to think about this, I'm making an insert mesh brush. The mesh itself is now the brush, okay? So this mesh has become now the brush. Okay, this curve is how I'm applying my stroke. So that's why I'm going to need to be in these two menus. I'm going to be in the stroke palette, which will affect things with the curve itself. And then I'm going to be in the brush palette to affect the actual mesh itself. So I want to affect the mesh. So I'm going to go to brush. I'm going to go to modifiers. And you can clearly see right here, the mesh is right there in that preview. And because this is the actual mesh. Okay. So I'm going to say I want to weld the points. So the mesh, I want these points to be welded. So now when I click, I get something like this, right? So now I have something I can draw out like that, and I can pull it apart, and I get nice bada bing, bada boom. So I added an extra edge loop on purpose for a reason. You can see right here in the bend that's happening, and through right here, if we look real close, let's get extreme close up. Okay, you can see it's not clean. It's kind of faceted, right? So I've added an edge loop in there to kind of help clean that up. But I need to do one other thing. Okay, so I'm going to come over here again to the brush because I want to affect the mesh. Okay, and what I want to affect now, in essence, is the resolution of the mesh along the curve. Okay, so I'm going to come here to my curve resolution. I'm just going to bump this to like even 4 is probably going to be enough. And come here, and you can see now I get a perfectly clean result. Yes! Okay? Greg, I'll come to your question in a second. Let me finish showing this technique, and then I'll come to your questions. Okay? So now, okay, what do I do with this? So what I do is I come back now to my hard surface or cube, and I'm going to work on a hard surface piece today too. And we'll even put some of this more in practice. But right now I'm just showing the fundamentals of where my mind is going, right? And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to append something else. I don't care what it is. It's not relevant at all, okay, what it is. All right, so whatever. The ring, okay? Yay! Okay, so this ring is obviously another subtool that's sitting inside the cube. This is exactly what I want. I want this ring to be sitting inside the surface that I want to work on. Okay? And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell ZBrush, okay, we're going to use live booleans now. All right? And I want this ring to be subtractive. So nothing's going to happen, right? Because the ring is sitting inside. I have to start bringing the ring out to make something happen like you see now, right? Because now the ring is at least overlapping the surface above it, which is the cube. Okay, so I'm going to undo this, and then now that ring again sitting back in the middle. So Fahid, no, this cube is not dynamic subdiv. I actually have divided it up. So the live booleans, you don't need to use dynamic. There was this misnomer when we launched live booleans that you had to use dynamic subdiv with it. You don't. It can be done with arbitrary meshes that's completely triangulated. It can be done with Sculptris Pro. You can sculpt on it. You can have subdivision levels. You can not have subdivision. It can be Dynamesh. It can be whatever you want. Okay? That's the beauty of also live booleans. Now that I have this, people, I've got this brush selected. And what I've done here is I made a brush that's going to allow me to draw out, right? And I'm drawing out on the surface. But you notice what surface is it actually looking at? It's not looking at the ring in the middle because I can't get to it because it's actually sitting inside the cube. So the cube is what ZBrush sees, right? So then it's going, okay, I'm going to draw on the surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to one-up this, and I'm going to say, okay, this is just drawing on the surface, right? So nothing's really happening, right? It's like, yay, nothing happens. Okay? What I'm going to do is come over here to the brush, and again, I want to affect the mesh. And what I want to affect the mesh's depth. Depth. Sweetie cat. I swear. Okay? So I'm going to come here to my depth menu, and right here there's an embed. You can see by default this is set to 70, which is based upon the mesh I made. It had a depth of 70. And we're automatically doing that, so we're making sure that when you draw it out, it stays on the surface, right? So if my hand's the cube, right, and then my pen is the brush, we're making sure that that brush always sits on the surface, that it never penetrates inside or is floating. I actually want to penetrate inside the surface, so I'm going to change this to start. I'm going to change this to 0, okay? And now what happens is if I start drawing out a curve, boom, I get instant scribe lining now. Okay, and now I have this that's along a curve. I can manipulate it. I can move it, right? We can pull it off the surface. And I can get rid of that one if I want to. But I can continue to just draw, then snap, and then draw, then snap. And all this is now is a subtool. And I'm going to turn on my dynamic subdiv that I'm using this for scribe lining. So if I look at this now, let's put this in a little bit different of practice. Let's grab something else. Let's grab the dog. Why not? He'll be fun. Okay, and I'm going to say let's divide the dog up just to get some surface if I want to. All right, I'm actually going to delete the dog because I'm going to add another feature on top of this. Okay, so I'm going to now say redo what I just did. I'm going to append. We'll grab the ring again, whatever. We're going to resize this down, and I want to make it tiny and sitting inside the dog so that I know the brush will not touch it. Okay? And I'm going to turn this into subtractive, and then now I can just start drawing on the surface, and I can say, okay, that's a little excessive, a little big, and I can change the size of my scribe line and do whatever. So I really like this technique. Because like I said, it's non-destructive. So it comes back to me and someone goes, hey, I don't like that line where it's sitting in space, how it's sitting on the surface. It's just a subtool. All I have to do is turn it off and I'm back, right? Now, what I like to do with this as well is this. I'm going to use the dog, and I'm going to use, again, the slice curve, right? So this is going to allow me to make slices, and I can do stuff like this, right? So now I'm going to get a couple other polygroups. So this polygroup is going to stay the same, and I'm going to get 2 here. Then maybe I'm going to do something like this. Okay, so now I'm getting multiple polygroups. We can even switch to something like slice circle, and I want that to be squared and centered, so I'm going to say I'm going to do something like this. Okay, and now I'm going to get a circular slice there, and it's going to be on both sides. So why am I doing this? Because right now I have a brush that I've selected, okay, that's along a curve. And I can take advantage of this with polygrouping as well. So I can go to my stroke menu, curve functions, and then in this frame mesh, I can tell ZBrush to only look at the polygroups. Okay, and then I hit frame mesh, I get curves wherever the polygroup has changed. So what this does for me is, because I have a brush with curve mode turned on, look up here, okay, I just tap, right, and I'm going to get that brush, okay, applied to the mesh, right? So this is now being applied to that dog, right? And then now I just say, or let's split this based upon my unmasked points, and then now let's turn this into a subtractive, and there you go. I've now got this happening with my dog. This is why I really like this technique, right? Is it gives me a lot of freedom to start, again, being non-destructive, because now I have this, I can get rid of it. Okay, so this is another technique. Now, to do this again, another thing I like to use to make things like a scribe liner or cutting into the surface, okay, is actually the slicing brush. So I like to not only just slice like this, okay, I want to do a little bit more with my slicing, right? And in this case, let's even do workflows that we all know and love. Let's even throw Dynamesh on this. Okay, so I'm going to up the Dynamesh a little bit. Let's go more than that. Yeah, there we go. That's enough. Okay, so now this is a Dynamesh mesh. Okay, so I know now I can slice here, right? And when I slice, I'm getting a clean cut through here, right? And I'm going to show a fourth technique after this. I'm telling you, there's so many ways. Okay, so number 1, I'm getting a clean cut, so that's a check mark. Number 2, I'm getting new polygroups. What I'm also going to do now is I'm going to turn on my B radius. And this is where I love this. This is a good feature right here. Okay, I don't know why I just went down south. I don't know why I went down south right here. It's a very bad South accent, so I apologize for those living in the South watching me right now. It's a very bad one. Okay, so what this is going to give me the ability now is I can cut across, but instead of one slice, I'm going to get dos. I'm going to get 2 slices. So what I've created now is something like this. So what this opens up for me now, hi Bjorn, is cutting across, okay? And you can see I didn't start across that purple. I stayed inside that purple. So this purple stays purple. It's a lot of purples, okay? So in essence, I've got now 3 polygroups here, right? Because the curve split across, and as long as you cross completely over a polygroup, you're going to create a new one. So what I mean by that is, let's say if I start in this pink and then I end in the red, the only new polygroup I'm going to get is right here. This is going to stay the red, and this is going to stay the hot pink. And you can see here, there's now this blue, there's this, and then there's this. Okay, so I won't go as fast. So there's now that blue one, there's now a new middle hot pink, and then now there's another blue. Okay, so knowing that, this gives me the ability to start having a little bit more fun. I can say, okay, now from here, I want to come up the neck and then come straight across and do that. Okay, so I double tap the Alt key to make that point. And so I'm getting scribe linings that I would want to do and use here, right? So then I can say, I don't like that one. Let's come across like this and come up maybe more at an angle. And then I'm just playing and manipulating and changing, right? And looking at things a different way. And then maybe I want to now have one come here, right? And let that slice. Perfect. come across, maybe put an angular one here, and let's actually round it a little bit so it kind of rounds up. And so I know I'm going to get 3 new polygroups here. This polygroup's not going to change. So what I'm developing here is a workflow now for me to be able to do this. I can say, okay, give me this, this, and let's say that. Okay? This is now what I'm looking at. Okay, and I don't want these legs. Get rid of those. Okay? This is now the important part for me. Okay? And so what I want to do now is tell ZBrush, let's go to my edge loops. Okay? And now I can use a couple things. I could just use panel loops, or I can just use edge loops. So what I like to do is throw this little crisper on, and then I like to say, okay, I want this to be pushed in. So I'm going to put this displacement slider, which is displacement, so it's DISP, which is short for displacement. Click edge loop, and what I get now, ooh, that's a little much. Okay, that's a little much of displacement. Do this, and now what I get is this on my surface. Right, and you can see you're getting nice, clean results, and I know those are all the same. Now, we can also say panel looping, and in this case, I like to turn on inner and then panel loop it, and then now you're going to get an inner panel loops that are happening, right? Where the polygroups are changing. So if I want this to be consistent, I turn this off over here. I say, you know what? What I want you to do is actually ignore the groups, but still do the panel. Okay? And then I say panel loop, and now I get this, and now I'm getting a different type of panel that actually has a bevel in the surface. And then, of course, this all has polygrouping assigned to it as well. So this is taking it to more advanced. And don't worry if you have something like this going on. I can fix this with deformation, and then I come over here and say polish by groups, and that can start cleaning up. So I'll open up the algorithm, and then I can start even cleaning that up even more and more and more and more and more. Right? And you can see all that is going to get nice. So this is really a nice technique for me. Okay? It allows me all this freedom to be able to do certain things, right? And then now I've got, say, this polygroup. And then I can say, let's do it again. Let's do it again! Panel loop it inner, right? So now I've got a double notch paneling happening there. And it looks like I have some crazy triangle. Oh yeah, I got a polygroup over here. So I need to get rid of that little polygroup in there. Okay? So that's another technique. Okay, so there's a fourth. Okay? There's a Wacom Cintiq sale. Is it a big one? Are they giving a big discount? I see that. There's a Wacom sale happening here. Let's do it again. Do what again? You want to mean do how I did this again? Shaquille, do you want me to, how did I do this? You want me to do this again, show that technique? How far back? Okay, well, let me rewind. I'm on a dual processor computer right now, so I have actually 2 processors that are 10 cores each. So I got 20 cores with 40 threads, and I got 64 gigs of RAM. Which honestly, this is a computer we built, and it was at the time, it only was about $3,000 to build this computer. Now it'd probably be only around probably $2,200 to build that computer that I'm having now, or maybe even $2,000. Okay, so. Oh, I just shut a switch. Okay, so someone also brought up group loops. Okay, I'll come back to that, but I want to show now also another technique, because someone brought up masking, right, which was a great question, right? So here is something that's also very cool about masking that maybe you guys might know, you might not know, okay? So let's say this scenario we have now is this, where we got a Dynamesh again. We'll get up in the 600s. Perfect. No, don't keep my subdivision levels. Boom, bada bing, bada boom. Okay. So the slice brushing and having the B radius is very nice. I'm getting a double slice, right? Because I can even do that with a slice circle. And when I slice a circle, I'm going to get multiple circle cuts, right? And then what's nice now is I have the ability to make that same cut somewhere else on the surface. So I got the same cut. So you can see I can get that same exact cut somewhere else. So what I did there was I actually went to my modifiers and I hit replay last. So we store the last stroke, Okay, and then now I'm telling it, go do that stroke again somewhere else. Okay, I keep going down. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole again with this because I think this is a not used features that I'm like, why are these not being used? Because what they open up for you is just incredible. Okay, so we'll come back to this. Let me get to my fourth technique for scribe lighting here. Okay, then guys, remind me about the slicing thing, repeat thing. I'm going to blow your mind even more with something else. Okay, so we talked about this pen, right? And now I have a path ability. Okay, I have the ability when lazy mouse on also to make it just be a line, right? And this track curvature is going to become important. So what I mean by that is, and when we hold control and draw across and we do this, you can see it doesn't create the full mask. Okay, so again, I'm holding control key, clicking, and I got a line, right? That time I got it, but you can see it's not consistent. Not consistent, right? So I want to say, you know what? Let's tell the brush to look at the curvature when you're using lazy mouse. So I'm going to say 100%. So 100% means keep evaluating, right? And keep looking at the surface as it's bending. And turn around every time and then I look at my laser. Okay, so now when I click and do this, you can see that mask is 100% consistent. I'm getting the consistent mask, right? And I'm going to throw an extra thing on here. I'm going to throw an alpha on here so the mask is even a little bit, maybe a little bit sharper if I wanted to. Okay? So, knowing this, we are now being able to do stuff like this and say, okay, now I want it to come down like that. Okay, and then I'm going to make it come across like this. Then I'm going to come across like that. Okay, I got straight stuff. Then I'm going to turn off this backtrack, and then now I'm just going to freely sculpt something that I maybe want to have, I don't know, something else. And yes, yes, I made art. Okay, now I have this. Okay, what I like to do now, and what a lot of you might be doing and thinking is, the workflow that a lot of you might have done is this, where we make a new polygroup, which is great. We made a new polygroup. We can click on this, okay, and then we know we can panel loop this, and then we're going to get nice paneling, right? I like to now turn on that inner, and then I know it's pushing it in, and I'm getting this, okay? What I would probably do first, though, is probably polish this, right? I would probably do a polish so it's nice and clean. I want it nice and clean, right? So that when I do this now panel loop, right, I can get cleaner results, right? So then obviously to do that, I would probably show the dig, right? And in fact, here's another thing I see not being used. It's for giggles. Let's do a mask by polygroups. And now only those vertex points are masked. I'm going to inverse those, right? And I'll blur it a little bit more. And then now I'll come to my deformations, and I'll do a polish by groups. And I know the only thing that's getting polished is that part, right? None of the other part of the dog's being touched, right? And then now I would click on this, and then now do a panel loop. And then now you can see the results that we start to get. Now, great. Yeah. Great. Look up here. Okay. Look at me right now. Lisa needs braces moments. So there is something else that we can do that is a very cool technique, okay? And we got the mask, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice with the mask. So I'm going to use these slicing brushes with the mask, the Three Amigos. I love the Three Amigos Southern Cross. Good job. I like it. Okay. So all I'm going to do is this. Bam. Bam. What just happened? So what just happened was I made a new polygroup still, okay? And you can see it's sliced. So I'm already starting now with a super more clean version of my mask right out the gate, okay? Because that's important to me. I don't know why, but it's important to me. All right? So I have this, and people, come on, let's think outside the box. This can go, okay, what if I now even just did an extract on this, right? I say an extract, I say okay, bingo bango, I accept it, right? So now I've got an extract, and guess what? The extract's halfway in, halfway out. Turn on this as a sub, right? And then I'm going to say, okay, I want this now to be used as a cutting tool, right? So now I have this to be used and even doing something like that, right? So this is non-destructive because it's live booleans. I'm a big fan of this because I can turn this off and say, get rid of it. I don't want it like that anymore, okay? So, but if you guys are like what we've been showing, I now have a clean version. I click on this, and now you guys can either do the edge loop with the crisp, or you can do the panel looping thing that I've been doing, right? And click this, and out the gates, I'm just going to get start getting smoother results. Okay, this is happening. These little things are happening probably because there's a little triangle sitting along this edge somewhere in here. There's probably an itty-bitty triangle either here or along here. But again, I really don't care because I know I can do this, and I know I have the ability after the fact to come down here and say polish that off, and you can see it just makes it clean. So it doesn't really bother me. Okay? Okay, so let's recap what I did here, right? Because you guys will not be able to follow what I just did there. Okay, so I've got my mesh, right? And I'm going to use masking. So I'm just control key and I'm masking, right? But what I've also done is I want to turn on lazy mouse. Okay, so I'm holding down control key and I got lazy mouse turned on. And what I want to do is I want to start doing some nice clean cuts lines. So I'm going to go to Backtrack. I'm a big fan of turning on snap to track. I prefer it. So here's the difference between what it is. Okay, so I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to use line. So that allows me to draw out a line first and then it backtracks. But you can see it's not staying on the line. Okay, I want to make sure that's perfectly straight. Okay, so I'm going to say, wait. The line that I draw out, I want you to snap to it. Okay, so I got a snap to track. So when I draw that out, the track is that red line. And so when I go across, you can see my icon's way down here in the document, but it's still drawing perfectly along that line. This is very important to understand. Okay, so again, I'm turning on snap to track. The other thing I've turned on because I know I'm on a rounded surface, right? And that's the track curvature. I got to find a new word than all right. I've noticed that when I'm talking to you all or anybody or when I'm teaching, I say all right a lot, or I don't know why. It's really bothering me now. And you guys are now going to notice it because I've said it. I can't get it out of my vocabulary. Okay, so now that I have this back to track, snap to track, and line, this allows me to do things like this, right? I can now just mask freely. And of course, the benefit over this is symmetrical, right? So I have the ability to say, I know whatever I'm doing here is also happening on the other side for me, right? And then I can come across here, yes. And you come across like that. Maybe do something like this. Okay, and then say maybe do something like that. Yes. Right? So it's just masking. I'm not doing anything crazy here. I'm just masking. That's it. That's all I'm doing, right? So it really opens up some great avenues for me, right? So you can see the different things you're going to be able to do here. Now that I have a mask out, I want to tell ZBrush, use this mask to cut the surface and create a new polygroup. Okay, so this is what we're looking at right now. We're looking at a surface that's one polygroup. Okay, I'm just seeing if my friend's still on here. How did I slice the polygroup? Tully, do you need me to show you still how to slice the polygroup? I've got you guys in the chats. I got messages in the phones. We're bringing everyone together, people. It's people bringing people together, ZBrush. Okay, so I have this mask now done, okay? And what I want to tell ZBrush is I want to now take that mask and I want to make a new polygroup and I want to slice it. So I used a shortcut, but really all I did was press this button right here. edge loop mask border. You can see the shortcut is Control-Shift-E as an edge loop. So you click this, whatever is masked automatically gets sliced and assigned a new polygroup. So then, of course, what that does for me is creates a very nice sliced version of my model, which, of course, is dependent upon polygon, right? And I got a new polygroup. So there you go. Now I've got this. And now you guys decide, what do you want to do? Do you want to use something like panel looping, or do you just want to do straight edge loop it? Okay? So that was 4 different techniques right there of scribe lining. I got a sculptural technique, I've got a slicing brush technique, I got a live boolean technique, right? And I got things like this. So group loops came up in these questions. What about group loops? Well, what group loops is doing, which is very different, is it's looking at the polygroups. Okay, so if we don't do this, okay, and I just do this now, which is just Control W. Okay, this is not clean, right? So what group loops is doing in essence is it's going to clean wherever there's a polygroup difference and create new loops of real clean topology. All right, so for example, let's say I want to mask something out like this, and I want the group loops around this now, because I maybe want to put this, the scribe lining that I want now is I want a line here and here. So I don't want the green to push in. I want outside the green to be pushed in. Okay? In essence. And don't forget there's things like polygroup it to do things like this as well. Yeah, I know no one ever used that mask by border. Guys, I don't want to tell you how many years that button's been there. In fact, I want to say 3.5. So that was like 10 years ago. Okay. So what group loops is going to do, when I click this, it's going to look at all the polygroups, and you can see it cleans it up. So it's pretty much kind of a little bit doing what edge loop mask border is doing. But the one benefit that it is doing, it's creating new topology for me. And you can see this new topology right in here. You can see there's 4, right? So I'm talking about this loop here, this loop here. Let me go smaller brush size. This loop here, 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 and here. And it's because I've had my loop slider, as you guys can see, it's set to 4. 4! Okay, we're not golfing, we're creating art, baby. So why do I care? Again, guys, this goes back to what are you trying to make artistically? And what am I trying to make? Do I want just a panel loop that digs in? Or maybe do I want this to be a double panel loop? And so what I mean by that, I have the ability now to do this, which I know is a super clean topology. I'm going to grow it out one more, which the hotkey, what's the hotkey, someone? Pop quiz, people. What? Pop quiz. What's the shortcut to grow a selection? That's my Chicago Cubs former announcer, Harry. Yeah, live. What's the hotkey? That's right. We got it right there. Control-Shift-X, right? Which is expand. And then to shrink it, it's Control-Shift-S. And then to grow the whole thing, it's Control-Shift-A, as in I'm Canadian, eh? Right, so the benefit to this now, people, is now do a panel loop on this. Okay, so now when I panel loop this, right, I'm going to get something very different. Okay, so let's turn this off. Let's look at this, right? And I'm going to say, well, I need it to go in, right? So I'm going to say inner. Let's put a little more thickness in it and start going at this, right? Oh, in fact, you know what? It might help people if I told it to ignore the groups, right? So this is panel looping, but you can see the panels are so big right now, right? The thickness needs to come way down so I can start getting something like this, right? This is what I'm looking for now, right? So now, see, I got this scribe lining happening. Like, it's endless here. I like as you those have watched my stream, what is ZBrush? It's a cake. Nom, 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 nom. I'm layering feature on top of feature, or if you're a big fan of onions, call it an onion, right? You want to have onions are very healthy for us, gives us the bad breath, but it's layers. It's what it's about, layers, right? So this is me just going, okay, I know I can create a mask real fast. I can create a new polygroup, and I got something like panel loops. And that's it. That's all I'm doing. And then I'm going, do I like this? Do I not like this? Right? I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go even lower with the thickness. So I'm getting even something like that. It's very subtle pushing in, right? And then that's what I'm getting. And then there's nothing stopping me from going, okay, I want to go now, let's take this, and let's now throw just an edge loop. And I'm going to go a little bit crisp. Okay, not that crispy. Not that crispy. Not that much displacement. And then now I, in essence, have a double thing happening here. I've got a panel loop first, and then I've got just a pushed-in surface. Okay? So this gives me this type of workflow. And again, I could clean all this up before I did all this, right? We now know how to make this cleaner, right? So you can now combine these, right? And so instead of me just hitting group loops here, you guys could have done this, right? And then done a group loops. So you're going to do a group loops on an already existing clean mesh. So this is just going to get cleaner for us, right? It's just going to be a better result right out the gate, okay? And then, so now, out the gate, you're going to have something like that that already looks, I'm done. Move on. It's my world, man. It's my world, people. I'm living in it. You could join me. You could not join me. Okay? And that's it. That's what I'm doing here, right? And we just keep going down the rabbit hole of things that we can do. So as an artist, for myself, that does a lot of hard surface, all those techniques, people, I use them over and over and over again. Okay? So let me get to some of these questions here before I start moving on some more here. George, I missed your questions, and now there's been so many people. I proceed with fireworks. I like fire. What's that Wacom deal, man? I'm intrigued. What's the Cintiq deal? I need a new Cintiq for my home computer. Struggling. Okay, wait. But when I use move to make it. Okay, so I have a question here. I export hard edge model from Maya, but when I use move brush to make it fit on a body, the edge get messed up. What should I do? Well, this is where I would use polygrouping and use the feature that we've been talking about already, which is in deformation, and using this polish to polish it. I would do something like that, right? And then don't forget now, you have stuff like move depth, right? So we now have the ability. So let's grab something hard surface so we have a little bit something to look at here. Let's grab Joseph's loader that he doesn't know what the front or the back is. So when Joseph streams next week, ask him, hey Joseph, which one's the front and which one's the back? Obviously this should be the front because that's how he made the legs, but it's just funny because it's an ongoing joke for me with him. Like, it looks like this could be the back though, Joseph, and this could be the front. Okay, so obviously what's new to 2020 now, when you're talking about things like move, and what you guys should definitely be using is the move infinite depth, right? This is now going to give me the ability to do movements. So it's grabbing, say, something like this and going like this. Whatever's behind that brush is going to move, right? So I know across the whole thing here, every one of those vertex points are being moved. Hey, Jim from Greece. There's plenty of ways to make seamless textures. Absolutely. And let me see if the tilde key is not working. Okay, so this is an amazing brush. Okay? Because now I can change silhouette and form. I know it's going across the whole thing. Okay? And what I can do is I can tell it to be along a certain axis point. Okay? So by default, the depth right here, okay? You see there's an XYZs in here? XYZs? You can tell it what depth you want to move around, okay? So if you just turn this on, you don't have any of these on, it's going to be camera plane dependent. What's going on, Bradley? And there is no way to control the depth of the slice brush. It's camera plane dependent, so it's just going to slice all the way through a surface. You have to hide the surface if you don't want to go through all the way through the surface. So that's how you would do that. Okay? Or mask. as well to help you with this. Okay, so let me show this and I'll come back to that slicing thing. So if I turn on the Y, this infinite depth now, this brush, you can see it's a Y movement now. So I'm moving only along the Y now. Even though I'm not even looking at the Y, I'm looking at from the side. You can see it's moving it only along the Y. It's not moving this direction anymore, right? It's just moving along the Y now. Whoops, cancel, right? So I can do this, and then now I know this is moving along everything along the Y. Okay, so that's the benefit. Now, to your slicing brush, okay, what you need to understand about this slicing brush is it's looking at the whole surface, and it's seeing the whole surface. So when you slice something, right, it's going all the way through, okay, and seeing the other side. So if you want to control the depth and you don't want it to go through, then I would just hide the portion that you don't want the slice to have happen, then slice, and then show, and you can see the slice will stop. That's the only thing you can do. You can't do anything else, okay, because that's the way the brush is built. It's built to look at the mesh, camera plane dependent, go through the entire thing, okay, because then there's benefits to all these benefits I'm doing. What I've just been showing the last hour, having that ability creates those benefits. Hey, Daniel from Argentina, what's going on? Okay, so Alex, hopefully that answers your questions. Okay, let me look at my other questions coming. All right, my man Tully, life-changing stuff. That's what I like to hear. Okay, so we now have all these abilities to slice, blah, 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 right, to create these multiple ways of working. Okay, so for me, when I like to work as non-destructive. And Greg, I know you asked questions previous. I don't know where they are now in the chat because there's so many been chats. So if you want to throw your questions back up, I can answer the questions for you. All right, I'm just looking at my time. See how much we got. Oh, we still got some time. We still got time is on our side. Here it is. All right, so we got another question. Paul, nice to see having you here. Thanks for being here. I have two different questions. Actually, the first one is there a way to align mesh with transpose? Do you mean aligning as in you want multiple meshes and then you, like Photoshop, you want them all to align along the same way? That's a tricky question. There's no real align button that's going to do that. Okay. No, you can use what you're saying to align with the camera. You technically could align that way, but no, you can't take multiple meshes and then tell them all to be aligned like you can, like the align tools you say you have in Photoshop. There's not a button that just does that. Okay. Okay. So, Greg, can you please tell? Can you please tell me you use an alpha to stamp height information? I do use an alpha to stamp height information, color to stamp diffuse information, opacity to cut what's around. Do you want to know how? Let's say I have a scan texture of rock or leaf, which has an alpha and height map. In new ZBrush, I guess I can use it to scatter it across the surface, but have no idea, does it support alpha, opacity, channel, so I can get anything I want to do? Yeah, absolutely, you can do stuff like that, right? So, and especially in 2020 now, what's new to 2020, since you brought it up, there's something new to 2020. That makes what you just asked even more popular, because there was something in old versions that would create a problem for us, and that's when you're starting to put an alpha with a texture. Old ZBrush would use the alpha to not only clip the brush. So let's say, for an example, let's switch to standard. Okay, let's do a drag rectangle, and let's do something like this. Okay, so what I'm got is I'm drawing out something like that, right? So I got bump, right? Beep. Okay, I can say, you know what? I'm going to also add some color. So I'm going to fill this first with some color white. So I'm going to turn on my RGB. I'm going to fill my object. White is what's selected. So I can say, hey, red, and then grab a red. And you can see now I'm drawing red and also getting that. Okay, and I can get black by holding the Alt key, which is pushing in. But really what that's doing is just grabbing the secondary color because this alternate button is on. So if I come in here and make this say blue, I can technically now red to blue. So my push in is blue, my pullout is red. Now, you can see there's a little bit of transparency happening here. You know what? Let's go up even more subdivisions. Let's go even more so you guys can clearly see this. Right? So now I got red, and you can see there's some fading happening. So if I drop my focal shift all the way to -100, I get this, right? Which is good, but I'm still getting a fade. That's because the alpha has a fade in it, right? So the color has to appreciate that fade. So if we were now to say, instead of a color, what if we throw a texture on? I don't know, let's throw this on it. So when I'm drawing it out, I'm getting this, right? So let's switch to a different alpha now. That kind of, we can see a little bit more. I'm going to switch to this alpha, and let's flip it, inverse it. Okay, and then I'm doing this. Okay, so now I've got an alpha there. That's very strong, right? So you can see I'm getting the texture only where the alpha goes. Now, what's new to 2020 is we're not always going to have an alpha like this. We're not always going to have an alpha that's perfectly like white across the board. We're going to have different types of alphas. We're going to have maybe something like this, right, that has a fade happening through it. Okay? Or you're going to have an alpha like this one that has some fading happening through there. What you can now do in 2020 is you can tell ZBrush, what I actually want is I want the alpha sculpturally to happen, but I want the full texture. Okay? So this little A has been added, okay, which is paint with alpha. If I turn this off, I'm now telling ZBrush, don't paint with the alpha anymore. So when I do this, you can see I get the full texture now, but I still get the bump of the alpha. Okay? So this is important because this is happening when we start looking at different strokes and different things, especially if we start using things like the new extractor brush, where let's say, oh, this just reminded me, we forgot to come back to that slicing thing. Wait, I'm going to blow your mind with something else here, people. Okay, so let's say as an example, okay, let's do white here. Let's divide this up. Okay, and then let's say, all right, this is a standard brush. Let's go to dots. Let's just paint with some color. So I'm going to fill the object. Let's just paint with some blue in here now, right? So I'm going to say I like to do something like this. It's gorgeous, gorgeous. Right? So I'm painting with this blue in here as well, right? If I turn this on, then the stroke will look a little bit more like this. So you can see I'm getting the texture stroke here. This one I'm not, right? So let's divide this up even more. Okay? So let's say I'm doing this, okay? And now I want to pick this up, right? So I go to B, X for extractor, and which one do I want? Do I want drag rect? Do I want dot? Or do I want just the standard? I'm going to do the standard. Okay, I'm going to make my draw size a little bit bigger here because I want to pick up this part. So I'm going to hit the G key. And then I'm going to say I want to pick up from here to there. Right? So what's going to happen now, for those that know, I'm creating an alpha automatically from my sculpt, and I also have the texture. Right? So now when I go use this brush somewhere else, right, and I draw out, I'm getting this. Right? But you can see the image, aka the texture, is being clipped by that alpha in particular. So then, of course, I can say not clipped or clipped, right? So there's with A on, and here's with A off, right? So you're going to get a little bit different result if you now throw, say, a completely different texture on this now, where I can now do this, and you can see I'm getting the full texture with the sculpt. I throw A on, okay? And now I'm just going to get the texture along with the alpha. So this is new to 2020 with Polygroup. Do our Barbara Walters. Okay? So this is an important new feature. There's people for years had made brushes, and they're like, hey, Paul, I don't want the texture to be affected by the alpha. There was no real good way to do that. Okay? So let me look at the tilde key thing here. Let's switch to this. until the tilde key is working for me. So I don't know whoever it was that said the tilde key is not working for them. It's working right here for me. I'm not having any problems. So create a ticket on our support so we can take a look at, there might be something going on with your particular ZBrush we got to look at, or your system. Okay? So tilde key is definitely working for me. All right, now, I said there was something that I was going to blow your mind with. Okay? That is pretty important and pretty huge. Okay? So here we go. Let's grab a surface. And again, I know, guys, I know this is boring and looking at shapes, but I really like to show things this way because it just, let's get the basic understanding is what I'm all about first, and then put it in practice. Okay? Bradley, the streaming program I'm using is probably what most people are using, is just OBS, which is free. And then I've just got a simple webcam, Logitech webcam, and obviously I'm using a Sennheiser headset. That's it. That's all I'm doing. It's nothing fancy at all. It's like a webcam that's maybe 80 bucks, 60 bucks. The headset that I'm using is maybe 100 bucks. And an OBS is free. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Okay, so when we were doing the slicing, okay, I showed you guys one thing. All right, so I said, all right, we know we can make a B radius. So I know when I do this, I'm going to get a double circle, which is based upon the draw size, which is the smaller circle, not the bigger circle. The smaller circle is your draw size. The bigger circle is your focal shift, okay? So if I want a smaller ring, say something like this, and I do this, I know I'm going to get a smaller ring around there. I can now go anywhere on this surface and hit Shift 1, and I can get the exact same slice. So everybody, that also goes for anything. If I do, say, a sculpt like this, I can now see this started here. I can come up here and say, give it that to me also there, also there, also there, also there, also there. Right? So I'm getting the same sculpt over and over and over and over again. That one stroke. Keyword, look up here. One stroke. That's it. Okay? When I rotate in ZBrush, that's a stroke. Okay? So if I Shift 1 that, it's going to try and rotate again wherever my cursor is, right? So I rotate, I put my cursor over here, it's going to rotate. See, it's going to keep rotating. So you can actually use that to even rotate in kind of sections. Okay? Now, what I've been doing is just doing the shortcut, which again is in modifiers, which is replay last relative. So replay last is just replaying the same exact spot. So I hit the 1 key, same exact spot. Replay last relative means I'm moving my cursor somewhere else and replay that relative stroke again. Okay? Raise your hand if you're getting this. If you're not getting this, give me a sad face. I'm going to pause for 30 seconds. Okay, I'm moving on. All right? What I want to do is something a little bit different, people. Okay, so I'm going to turn even off the B radius for right now, okay? And I'm going to say, let's do a slice. Let's do another slice. Let's do another slice. And let's do another slice. Okay? So what we have here now are 3, okay, slices. I love it. Your family came and asked everything was okay. That's the best. I love affecting other family members. It's me, baby. Loud and obnoxious. That's what I do. It's never going to change. It's what I like. What's the question? I see one hand up. Thanks, family. Thanks for the support from a wild and wacky craziness. Okay. So, I've made 4 slices here. People, watch this. This is like, yes! I'm making 4 more slices somewhere else. Not only that, people, I'm going to rotate the model, go somewhere else on the model, and do those same 4 strokes. What? Alex, you're raising your hand for a question? What's the question? What's the question? Type out the question for me if you got your hands being raised. I see a fire. Okay? This is so underused, and I don't, watch, okay? So let me put this maybe in terms that you guys maybe care more for, okay? let's do it sculpturally. All right? Let's do this sculpturally. Okay? Let's make it happen here. Okay, so let's just say, go all the way back to what we did. I'm going to do a morph target. I'm going to grab my chisel. And then let's say, okay, I'm going to say, let's do this, do this, do this, do this. Okay? Now I go somewhere else on the sphere, and I say, do it again. What? Right? I can now go anywhere on the sphere. And remember, I said rotation's a stroke. So the one thing you can't do is do this. Okay? Because what I'm actually doing is I'm not looking at brush, I'm looking at stroke. So watch this, people. This is where it's going to be even cooler for you. Let me undo this. Okay? I'm going to undo this. Do I my man Tully in my text, do I still got you? Because this is a big one, I think. All right? Not only can I do say, all right, I'm going to make a stroke, a stroke, a stroke, a stroke, right? I'm going to even switch to a completely different brush and do the same stroke with a completely different brush, right? So here, if I even switch to clay buildup, I'm now clay building up on top of other strokes. So what's really, really cool again about this, okay? So let's do another one. And don't worry, I'm going to show you how I'm doing this. Okay, so I'm going to do something like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. Okay, I've got that. So let's go somewhere else in the world. I'm going to hit do it again, right? Do it again. Okay, I can switch to Damien Standard if I want to. All right, and I can start telling it to do that strokes. Okay, so here, I'm going to go backwards again so we can start clean on this sphere and show you. All right, so let's do this. Let's just first do these strokes. Okay, and then I can say switch to Damien Standard and then draw all four in the same location. Okay, so my point here, it's not actually about the brush. It's about the strokes. Okay, again, let me rewind. It's about the strokes, not about the brush I'm using. Okay? So, what I've been telling ZBrush to do is store my strokes in the program. Okay? And then I can now tell it to replay those strokes with any brush in the same location, or I can go somewhere else on the surface and replay those. Okay? So, let's now walk you through what I'm doing exactly. Okay? So I'm going to dock the stroke palette, people, because I'm using the stroke palette. Right? And what I'm using is a menu that's been there forever, but no one ever opens it or uses it or understands in that sake. So that's why I'm here being loud, obnoxious, and throwing them at you now, throwing what we're doing here. Okay? I'm going to open up inventory. And you see what's in there? You see the stroke count? It says 4. How many strokes have I been doing? 4. Right? So, watch. I'm going to turn on record. See, it zeroes out. And now I'm going to just, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Look at my stroke count. 10. Right? So I can turn the recording off, and now I can say replay all of them. Now, it's not deep enough for 3D printing maybe for me. Replay them all again. Okay, that's deep enough. I know that's going to come out a lot better because this is going to be kind of tiny, so I need to push in a little bit more. And now what's the benefit is I can go somewhere else, okay, on this, and I can tell it to replay all those somewhere else. And what I'm actually doing is telling it to replay all relative. So you can see the shortcut to that is Shift-2, and the replay all is just 2, right? So this becomes important because I can now, in essence, store things where I want. And you can see how I'm rotating now. Because, guys, again, it's the stroke. And if my cursor's out here, it's redrawing them out here, which is drawing on no surface. So it's just going to rotate like this. So that's the only thing to understand about this. Make sure you don't get crazy and go, all right, I'm going to make the strokes, and then you do this, and you're trying to repeat them. You got to at least stay relative, hence relative strokes, right? Because they're relative to the surface. Okay? That's it. That's all I've been doing. And I can add strokes to it if I want to as well. So this is just, every time you hit record, this will zero out. Okay, if you turn on add first and hit record, see, they don't zero out. So you can even keep adding strokes to this. And then you can export them all if you want to and reload them in as a script. Okay, so this is very useful. Think of how many times were you making a pattern. Think about just that scribe lining. That'll work for slicing, right? Even if I'm going to start slicing things, right? I can say, let's record. I don't want add-on. Let's record, so it zeroes out. You guys can now do, hey, let's do a slice curve and do maybe a slice like this, right? And now you're like, okay, I want that same slice, but I don't want it like right here. I want it down here. So now you just move your cursor out here because that's where I started, right? And then now I just say, you know what? Let's replay that slice, right? So now it's replaying it in the exact same location, or do I want it to actually shift to replay somewhere else? And now I'm replaying it somewhere else, and see, now I'm getting that same stroke. Okay, when you say, Alex, creating wings, are you talking like animal wings? Or are you talking like hard surface, like a jet wing? Avoid the move of the camera. What's the easiest way to do that, people? Lock the camera. So go to your draw palette and turn on lock camera. Now your mesh can't be moved. It's impossible. It's locked. I can't rotate. I can't scale. I can't move. There you go. Lock camera. Done. Right? And then now I can just slice this for days. And I know I'm not going to have a problem, okay, with the mesh ever moving. Right? There you go. Lock the camera. Boom. Boom. We added that in 2019, which was actually released this year. We released 2 versions this year. 2020 was just released. Okay, there is multiple ways to do feathers. Okay, like anything inside of ZBrush. Okay, so let's take a vote. Do you guys want to see how to different ways of creating feathers? Is that a consensus thing? Okay, the shortcut to replay the strokes. Okay, if you're referring to just a single stroke, it's 1 to replay it in the exact same location. It's shift 1 to move your cursor somewhere else and replay just 1 stroke. Okay, if you're going to use the inventory, yes, this is on you. Yeah, everything. Well, I'm streaming to 4 platforms right now, people. So you have to forgive me. I just see all 4 platforms. Okay, and someone just asked in YouTube to create wings and feathers. Okay, so the inventory is 2 to replay all the strokes, and shift 2 to move them all around and play in somewhere else. Okay, there's your shortcuts. And again, you just scroll over the button, people, and it'll give you that. It'll give you those answers. It'll give you the answers. Okay, so feathers. The 4th one is I am currently also streaming to wow, Mixer, Microsoft. So we're doing an experiment to see how many people are actually going to watch us on Mixer as well. 4 platforms. Okay, so it looks like everyone's okay with doing some kind of feather thing. Okay, let's see how much time. Yeah, we only got maybe about 20 minutes left because then I got to go to a meeting. All right, so but there is multiple ways to do this, and there's one particular thing that you can do that I don't know if everyone knows yet. Okay, so number one of the first things that I could do, okay, is I can come into fiber mesh and make feathers this way. This is one of the easiest ways to make a feather. Okay, so I can make it be less or more feathers, right? I obviously probably want them to have a little bit more length. I want them to have more coverage. So I'm going to drop the numbers so you guys can see what's being done. Okay, so I'm adding some length to them, and I'm making them be wider in essence. okay? But what I'm going to do is open up the profile. So obviously a feather should taper at the beginning, get wider in the middle, right? And then start tapering at the end. Okay? And what I also need is more topology. So down here in my segments is in essence dividing this up. So I can start doing this, and we're going to turn the twist off, right? So this would be just a quick, simple way, especially for those conceptors. This is going to look like feathers, right? Obviously, I'm going to now start playing with this profile and getting a better profile to make it look more like a feather. Right? So this is just something that I would start to do. Like something like this, right? Okay. Now, what's nice about this is I can add a texture to this. And then tell you something about scaling. I'll come back to Greg about scaling. Remind me about it. Okay? So what that means is you guys can apply a texture to this, like this. And it's saying, hey, do you want me to resize the texture? I'm going to say no. That texture now gets applied to all these feathers, or i.e. fiber mesh. Okay? So if I was to say go and find, let's see if we can find something real quick. I'm going to do a search for something real quick. Just forgive me, I'm going to do a Google search to find an image that is going to get my point across for you guys. Here we go. Here we go. I don't know why I'm doing that, people. I'm sorry. I'm a little wild and even more wild and wacky today than normal. This looks good. Let's grab this one. Save the image. Desktop. Save it. Okay. So what I did is I downloaded an image that is of a feather, obviously. So I can import that image, right? And then I can say, I think it's this one. No. And there you go. I have an image of a feather, right? So if we keep making this be wider and wider, you'll see more and more of the feather, right? So what's happening is that feather is being stretched, right, across each one of them. And the reason why I got something with black is I'm going to first say I'm going to anti-alias it, and then now I'm going to turn on my transparency, and bada bing, bada boom, you got feathers. And then when you render, there are render settings that come into play here. So when I go render this out, the feathers can have a little bit more volume to them if you want, which I don't like. Okay, I'm not a fan of that at all. So in essence, it's making more of a cube shape. So I'm going to say don't do that. I'm going to say two sides here. Okay, and then re-render that. So now it's just, in essence, a plane of information, right? Okay? And so now I start to get something like this. Okay? Now, great, super. The key thing with this, though, is you got to make sure whatever texture you're going to use, and obviously I'm using a very low quality JPEG. I'd probably use a PSD because you can see the compression of this is not very good, right? So I would probably have a better texture, okay, than what I have right now. So I usually use a PSD and make sure it's pure black in the background, okay? Now, great, super, fabulous, right? So you can use Fire Mesh to do something like that. You could use this. Now, something else we can do is let's go ahead and I'm going to reset this, and I'm going to just make them all the same width, just for the sake, okay, of arguments, all right? I'm going to throw a little more gravity in there, and then maybe less. Yeah, something like, let's say that. I don't like how much gravity there is. There's too much gravity. There, that's better. Okay, I'm going to accept this. I accept you, Fiber Mesh. But your two-year-old really like that? I like that. Okay, so now what I've done is I've created a fiber mesh, okay, that is, in essence, polygons now, okay? But we've tagged these polygons. And you can also see it also took the polygrouping of the surface underneath it, which is pretty awesome. But what I'm going to now do is let's go make a feather, sculpt kind of like a feather shape. Okay, real fast. I'm not going to do anything great or fancy. There's so many ways we could do this. We can use the spotlight now mode. We can use shadow box. I'm just for the sake of just being something kind of quicker. I'm going to use ZModeler because I want to. That's why. Why, you ask? Because I want to. Okay, so we're going to do something like this. I'm going to say, all right, let's switch to some ZModeler. I'm going to say, okay, good there. All right, let's do a bit of this. Okay, this needs to taper. Let's turn this back to dots. Get back to this. Right, so I'm going to taper this real quick. Put a little taper in there. Okay, and then I'll taper this one now, so it's a little bit more like that. Perfecto. Then let's add another in there. And then let's taper that a little bit maybe. Okay, and let's, for sake, I'm going to do a feather a little bit more. Yeah, there. There, happy little trees. Needs to be a lot thinner. Okay, something like that. I'm going to say let's insert multiple edge loops. And I'm going to say interactive resolution. Okay, so I'm going to actually get rid of this. I do say something like that. Yeah, there. Okay. So something very simple, nothing crazy, right? It's because I'm going to want geometry because I'm going to be able to do stuff with this down the road too. But this technique is very handy, okay, that I'm about to do. So how this is looking at the surface becomes important, right? So looking at it from the front, you can see what this is doing. It's looking, actually, the stem's at the top of the world and the feather's going towards the bottom of the world, right? So watch this. I'm going to go to fiber mesh now, back to my fiber mesh, okay? I'm going to go to geometry. Okay, and let's close everything else down so you can see what I'm going to go to next. Okay, I'm going to go to modify topology and I'm going to click on micro mesh. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that feather. Okay, and it's telling me now to turn on the draw micro mesh. I'm going to say okay. I'm going to go to render palette. I'm going to go to my render properties and draw micro mesh. Okay, and now what's happening now is when we go and render, if we do a Shift R render, ZBrush is looking at the fiber mesh, but because there's a micro mesh assigned to it, it's going to want to start using that. Okay, so right now that mesh is not set up correct for me. Okay, so this surface is not set up the right way. Okay, so you see I'm looking at the bottom of this, right? So what I probably want to do is let's try changing this to maybe be something like that. Okay, and then this fiber mesh here. Okay, one thing I don't want it to do when I render, I don't want it to, in the render properties, right, to be more than one side. I just two-sided. Okay, so now that I've changed the mesh, I come back here and click on this, and now you can see there's more little dots happening through there, right? And that's because the mesh now is being stretched across the surface. So what I'm making here is the topology. What you're seeing now is actually my topology of the feather. Okay? So one other thing that I would probably do to make sure this is not stretching too much further, I would also say come down here to deformations and unify it so it fits within a perfect polygon face. Right? So now I'll come back here again, and now let me reapply that again. Right? And then now when I do a Shift R, okay, you're going to see more and more of like the shape that I actually created as we go here, right? So to give you an idea of this, here in the projects, in the miscellaneous folder, there's this. Okay, so you can see this is a great example There's just, in essence, cards like you would in gaming, but you can see there's a leaf on there. So when I go to render, I'm actually going to get the leaf. Oh, I got to turn live booleans off. That usually helps. You can't use this render with live booleans. And then you can see I get the leaves. Right? And all it is actually this sculpt that's being stretched across the fiber meshes. And that's all I was doing. I sculpted like some kind of feather. So in essence, you guys could sculpt a feather, right? And then use that to go stretch across the fibers. Okay, so let's see if about scaling. Let's say I want to create a prop for the game, which is roughly the human size. Could you please show me how to make sure that it has the correct scale? So when I export it to Unreal, Unity, Marma said it's a super tiny micron. Okay, that's easy. So as an example, all right, let's load a project with a human being as an example. All right. And by default, ZBrush's world really is millimeters. But I can tell it what this to be. So in the plugins, we have Scale Master. Okay? That's what this plugin is made for. Exactly what you're asking, Greg. Right? So I can say set scene scale, and what it's doing is it's looking at this mesh, and it's going, hey, this mesh has these measurements, 5.44 by 7.91 by 1.45. Unfortunately, most file extensions, they'll have the size, but it does not know the worldly scale. That's why you guys have to go in your other programs, and all programs, say, hey, this is a centimeter world, this is a millimeter world, this is an inch world, right? That's what tells the program what this is, okay? So I can say, well, this is going to be an inch world. So I can say this guy is actually 8 inches tall. Right? So right around there. So all I do is I click on that, and now I've literally sent this world now to be more in the inches world, and you can see my sliders are now showing this. So I can go in any one of these objects and say, hey, what's the size of this? I click on it, and I say slider to subtool size, and then this thing is about 2 inches by 1.5 inches by 1.7 inches. So all you have to do now is say, okay, I'm going to make a weapon that needs to be, since he's 8 inches, it's going to be 4 inches by 2 by 2. Okay? So I'm going to turn off this little R for ratio, and I'm going to say 4 by 2 by 2, right? And I'm going to say create new subtool. And then there you go. That is now 4 by 2 by 2 by 2. And then I can say, okay, that's way too big or too wide. So let's go 0.5 and 0.5 here. Okay, and then I'm not going to say all, and I'm going to say resize the subtool. And now that subtool is resized. So this is how I do all this. Okay? I know my metrics have been since my years of Canada. I've been Americanized when it comes to this now. I usually use millimeters actually, because obviously a lot of stuff I'm doing I'm printing off, and millimeters is just the better way to go. Meters is going to be you would have to use feet for that. Could see about adding meters. Okay, so that's how I would do that. Okay. For scaling with measurements for nano and array mesh, no, there's no way to do that. You can though do scaling with insert mesh brushes. You just need to go download a plugin that Joseph Dress made, and you can actually draw out insert mesh brushes with exact millimeter sizing and everything. He made it specifically for jewelers. I don't have a breakdown of the gun. I showed the gun. What is specifically Maverick Plus? Are you having an issue with array mesh? Okay, so there's your feather stuff. Okay, so there's just some quick examples of what we can do with it. All right, so I gotta leave soon. So is there any other questions that I can answer? So the array mesh properties. Breakdown that's tough. It's like a 45-minute conversation minimum for us to really break down array mesh to its full, like, okay, I get it, understanding. Let me see. Let me see if I can do. Let me do a crash course. Hold on. Let me grab something else that I have, and we'll do a crash course real fast here. Because array mesh is like a go-to for me, especially with live booleans and ZModeler and dynamic subdiv. Like I eat, breathe, sleep those features working together. And in fact, when we were making array mesh, I was like, I don't know if I'll use it. Now I'm like, hands down, I'll never not use it. In all honesty, okay, just telling you. Okay, so let me load something here. Oops. Whoops. Okay, so da 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 da. Let's see, live boolean. So I'm assuming you're referring to. I did two guns. I did the Rocketeer gun, and then I did my O2 District 9 gun. Right? I'm assuming you're referring to the District 9 gun. So which is all live booleans and array mesh and everything else like this. Okay. So what I love about array mesh is I can create with array mesh. Okay. So in essence, I don't know what maybe I'm going to go with this. What's up, Australia? Jamie Dix. Morning. So for example, let's say these bolts right here, right? So let me select these bolts. Okay, these are array. So again, non-destructive for me is huge. It's so important for me. Okay, and why I say that is, I can say when I made this, I didn't even have these little bolts in the design. I added them, but I wasn't even sure how many I wanted. So what I mean by that, I said, okay, well, what does 5 look like? Right? And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have another subtool that's also doing an array. So I can go down to that subtool, right? And what I can do is say, okay, this subtool with the bolts, how about I just copy that now, go to this one, and I paste, and now I can see, okay, what's that look with 5? Do I like that? Do I not like that? Okay, well, maybe 4 would be better. This is what I mean by a non-destructive. I can sit here and go back and forth and figure out what I like and what I don't like. And I'm using the up and down arrow key to swap between my subtools right now. So obviously for me, for something like this, I felt for my design, I liked 3, right? So then I can just copy this, and then now I can paste it, and then now I got the same thing. So it's the same thing that happened for this piece, right? Or these pieces up here. You can see now how much array mesh and live booleans I'm using. It's everywhere on this gun, right? Especially this piece. In fact, my original design was something more like this, and it was something more like that, right? So this is what I was doing with something like this, right? Which obviously that's a vent for the gun, so it gets air. I didn't like it. It was there wasn't enough. So this is what array mesh gave me the ability to do. I can tell it to repeat, and I can find, okay, do I like 6? And maybe I like 6 better. And then I can switch to the gizmo and still move it as a unit and see where do I want those vents actually, do I want them to be like that? And then I was like, you know what? And when I did this, I kind of liked the breaking up of that silhouette that was happening through here. But I didn't know that in my original design until I made the mesh and started array meshing it. Okay, so you can see what that's doing. So as another example, and let's take this to a different place now. Let's actually build an array mesh from scratch. Where's my mouse? Here, mousey, mousey, mousey. Oh, go over to the other monitor. Is touch on? I don't want touch on. Okay. So, as an example. Okay, here is just something simple, a window for a cathedral, which I made a cathedral. It was all done in array mesh. Okay? Now, what I really, when I fell in love with array mesh, is when I started doing things like this. Again, I didn't know maybe where I wanted to go design-wise. So array mesh gives me that ability. Okay? So, creating this, all I did was created one mesh. Okay? And I created, see what I'm saying? I say okay a lot. This, which is all just done through ZModeler. It's not anything fancy. This is not crazy. I started with like a slice. I actually took this from the top of a cylinder, is what I took it from. And then I made this. And then I know when I smooth, it's going to look like that. That's exactly what I want. I want a piece that looks like that. It's a cathedral, man. I need to have some stepping through here, right? So all I'm going to do now is say, all right, let's look at this, okay? But I'm not sure how big of a window do I want to make, okay? So I can say, let's turn on array mesh now. All right, I'm going to turn perspective off just so we're looking straight at things, excuse me. All right, and then I'm going to say, all right, how many of these do I want? So that's when my repeat comes into play. Okay, and I'm going to just do defaults. So you can see my repeats. I'm repeating them. Okay, in fact, here, let's make sure I'm starting fresh. Okay, so I'm repeating them. And you can see nothing changes. Okay? So I'm repeating 16, but they're all sitting in the same spot. So what I'm going to tell ZBrush to do is, hey, this particular mesh has now an array mesh pivot point. I want you to rotate around those pivot points. Okay? So I'm going to come down here to rotate, and looking at my mesh, I'm looking straight on it, so I know that's the Z axis. So I'm going to come to here and say Z amount. I'm going to say 360 degrees because I want a circle. Snowflake. It's Christmas time. Christmas time. So now the 16 of those, each one of them are getting a certain degree of rotation. So in essence, divide 16 into 360, and that gives you each degree of rotation. So what's beauty about array mesh is this is an instancing system. So my polygon count is not even changing. And now what I can tell ZBrush to do is, you know what? This mesh, I'm going to turn on the floor, is sitting at the center of the world. Okay, so I want to say move it around. So you can see I can move it around. Yay! Okay, I can add more repeats, do less repeats. Right, and I can watch this update on the fly. Great. So what I want to do, though, is I want to tell ZBrush, hey, when I move the mesh in the world, the surface of the world, okay, I want to be able to tell it, no, I want to repeat this differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock my position, okay, and I'm even going to lock my size. And what that tells ZBrush is when I start to move this, you're now locking position according to the other ones. So in essence, it's keeping equidistant positioning from each other. And so instead of them working as a unit together, it's keeping equidistant positioning because I'm moving them off the pivot point. And to someone's question, does it always have to be on the world axis? No. Okay? So right now, this particular one, 12 is not the answer. So it looks like maybe 8. And then this is all part of the beauty of array mesh. And then I can turn on dynamic subdiv, and I can see all of them looking. So this looks great. This is what I want. Now what's great about this is that I keep saying the design element. Now I want to start building more of the window out. So I can come over here and say, let's turn on symmetry. And guess what? I've got symmetry X and symmetry radial. Okay? So I can say, all right, let's take this and let's Q mesh this out. And I can see what is that going to look like. All right, all right, all right. Kind of like it, kind of like it. Right? And then I'm going to come over here and say, you know what else I want to do? Let's delete these faces. Then all of them get deleted. And then I'm going to say, all right, let's switch to edge. Let's bridge it. Let's do 2 holes. Let's do a circle. I'm going to click on one hole. I'm going to click another hole and say, okay, is that what I'm looking for? And here's the beauty. I'm looking at this in the sense of, wow, is that really what I want? Do I want it round? Or do maybe, how about you might want to do something more that's like this, but it's sharp? Like that. Maybe you want that. See, and I don't know until I do it. And so this is the beauty of array mesh. It's allowing me to experiment, right? I could do small rounded corners if I want to and do something like this, right? And now I got it, looks like that. Like, which one do I want? I don't know. But this gave me the flexibility and allowed me to do this, okay? So let's take this again to another thought process here, right? Let's Let's just grab a simple mesh like this, simple cube, right? And I'm going to now tell ZBrush, let's array it. Okay, I'm going to say let's array it, I don't know, 16 times. All right? I know I'm going to lock my position and my size. Okay, and the one thing I like to use with array mesh is the transpose line. Good night from Brazil, Sergey. So I'm going to turn on this transpose. This is going to be something that's going to be important for us. So I've got gizmo, but I also have a transpose line. So I'm hitting the Y key. And you notice now this transpose line has things like stage 1 and repeat on it. So when I activate this transpose button, you can see the difference, right? Okay, so when this is on, I am telling ZBrush that what I want to do is use the transpose line as the GUI to drive the features of array mesh now. Okay, with this off, it's just using transpose line normally. Okay, with this on, it's now being driven as the GUI. So what that means is down here you see there's an offset, a scale, rotate, and a pivot, right? So offset is technically move. Scale is scale, rotate, right? So offset, if I want to switch to move in the transpose line, this is actually now going to offset my bricks, right? And you can see the slider in the Y is now moving, right? So instead of me going here and clicking on the slider or putting in a value, because I have this turned on, I can just now move this freely or hold the shift key and I can say, I want something like that. Okay? So this relationship that's happening is offset is the move, the scale is the scale, so forth and so on. But watch what we're going to do now. Okay? I'm going to tell ZBrush now to make another stage. Okay? So when I hit a pen new, ZBrush says, oh, okay, you've got a whole nother array mesh happening. And what's happening here is we are making another tower or line of bricks. Okay, so what stage 2 is doing, it's looking at stage 1, right? And then going, oh, okay, in stage 2, you want that whole row again. Okay, so if I go append new, make a third stage, what I'm now getting is both stage 1 and 2 in the third stage. So what's happening here is that each stage, as you see I cycle through them, is giving me the previous stages. So it's like a hierarchy or parenting. So now that I have this third stage, see I can repeat and have multiple of this happening over and 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 over again. Okay? We're everyone with me. So appending or inserting just creates another stage, and it looks at the previous stage, and then we go from there. So what I'm going to do with stage 2, instead of just giving me another row of the bricks, I'm going to turn it into a chain. And you can see that my transpose line just popped to the top, and you can see that a brick just got put on the top. Okay? Yes, Stefano, we record all of our streams, so it'll be on YouTube after and also on our Twitch channel after. Now, the benefit to me with this, people, is think about this as kind of like a roller coaster or Lego snapping building, okay, if you want to. I like to say roller coaster because it just makes sense. So what I mean by that is now I have a stage 2. I'm going to tell it to rotate, right? I'm going to say let's rotate this direction, right? So I'm going to say rotate negative 180, let's say, as an example. And I'm going to say give me, I don't know, 12 of them. So you can see now they're rotating on themselves over here. Okay, and this is now going to lead me to why I like the GUI. Okay, I'm going to switch to pivot. But because I have the transpose on, you see there's a yellow circle in the middle there. See that yellow circle? If I now just move that yellow circle, oh, look what happens. Oh, my life. Right? And I can come over here and say, no, this one needs to be 0. So this is now 3.5, right? So the pivot got actually moved off the world. Okay? And then now I have this. So now I can say, oh, I want that to be a nice archway. Something like that, maybe. Let's say 21. Yeah, I like 21. Okay? Then I say append new. Boom! I get the brick. Look up here on the end, right? And now I say this stage, stage 3, is going to be another row of bricks. So I'm going to just move and then just repeat it. And I need to repeat it enough times. So I'm going to say probably it needed 16. Right? And then this is now all relevant. Right? So now I have this. So it's a bricked archway. Now the beauty again, just like when I was doing with the window people, this is an instancing system. Look at my polygon count. It's 12 polygons. What this now gives me, watch this, it's literally only this brick that's being looked at. So what allows me to do, how about I do say something, let's have a little fun. Let's do an inserting an edge here. Let's not make it symmetrical. Let's do this. Let's do, say, something like this. I'm going to now Q mesh this up. It's doing it to all of them, right? Then Q mesh this. And then I'm looking going, oh, do I like that? Do I not like that? Right? Do I want to now say, let's do an inset on this face? And then I'm going to do a Q mesh and say, do I want, say, something like that going around? Like, everybody, this is getting to be super powerful now for me. Right? I can say, let's make this brick a little bit longer. And you know what? Actually, let's move it down. So let's do this so it has kind of a taper to it as well. Yes. Yes. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to say inset. I'm going to say along a region. And say something like that. You know what? Let's also add this face. Let's inset a region like this. Then I'm going to say QMesh, polygroup all, and say I can do stuff like that. Like, look at this. Look how complex we're getting, but it's really not complex because it's just ZModeler with array mesh now, right? Looks like now something out of Aliens, I guess. I don't know, right? And then now the beauty of this, people, is I can append a new, and that one's not a chain, and now I can say, hey, I want multiple of these being repeated now. And now you got something like that, right? So it's so many things you can do with array mesh. It's become probably for me now, because I do so much hard surface, it's a top 5 feature for me. Because I use it with every single hard surface piece I use, with every single time I use live boolean, I am using array mesh. It is a go-to. I need to use it all the time for myself. So that's a little bit of some crash course right there on array mesh for you, since we were being asked about it. Are there any other quick questions? Because I got to go, unfortunately. It's 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock. You can literally build a town with 1 brick. Absolutely. Right? So there's been no update to array mesh for this version, and no update right now to ZModeler for this version. But yeah, in essence, people, that's exactly what I did. I mean, here's a building. I made a cathedral all built around array mesh. So here's my cathedral. And everything, all 4 of the walls are just array mesh. And then all these are repeating arrays. Right? So you can see now all the arrays I used. So when I was making this piece down here, so you can see as I built it, I was able to watch what that looked like, and that's how I did this. I added after the fact. This I added, like, it's kind of made me, as I built it, I just started going at it, right? And see, these are all just array meshes now. And then so now I need to make now telling it just like this one, right? So this is arraying, right? So I copy this and then come to this, and then I can append a new, paste it, right? So this is just copy and pasting now starting to happen here. And then now you can see, look, it's arraying around all 4 places now. So in essence, to finish off this building, I now just go to each one of these other subtools, and I just turn on array, and then I paste, and then now I'm going to get all other parts of the building. And now I'm using array mesh to build the building. Right? So there's a door, so I need a new here, and then paste. Because I need another stage, which that stage is the repeating part of the 4 walls. Right? And you see there's the door. So you can see how I built this. The entire thing you see here is built in ZBrush. I never left ZBrush. Ever. All of it. And this isn't the finished one. I have like bricks that go along here as well with surface noise. But the whole thing you see here is 100% ZBrush. Never left. The danger here is the way you have some models. Why is it so heavy? It's heavy because I have multiple rendering things. It's right now is I'm a rendering array. I have live boolean turned on as well. So there's just multiple things I have turned on. I have dynamic subdiv on everything. So all that stuff is compiling on itself a little bit. Okay, and then obviously I can turn on this dynamic and look at just this. And I can make my faster approach. And then I can select now, say something like this and say, oh, append new, paste, right? And then now you see I got all 4 of those pillars going around the building. Same thing with this, okay, append new, paste, right? And then you can see I'm building the building up, but the other 4 don't actually exist, right? The only things that exist is this and nothing else, really. That's all that exists. Okay, so I'm telling you people, you need to play with array mesh. It's fastly become hooray mesh. Right? So unfortunately I gotta go. I want to thank you for tuning in. Joseph Drust will be going next week, and then my man Solomon Blair will be going the following week. So make sure you tune in for us chiming in. It's been fun. Hopefully everyone got away. If there's some last minute question, throw it up there right now. Do you think NanoMesh could ever benefit from dynamic subdivisions? You can already use that. You can use NanoMesh with dynamic subdivs. Just turn on NanoMesh. When you have NanoMesh, turn on dynamic subdiv to the mesh that's actually being used as the NanoMesh. Doop. Okay, everybody, have a great day. Have a delicious evening for those around the world. Have a fabulous holiday. Happy holidays. Happy holidays. The bells keep singing. All right, I'm out. Everyone have a great time.